Good time zone. It's me, DjDoubleT, here and existing with a new segment called, well, I'll call it temporarily for now, the D&D Rundown, because this is where I recap my campaign as I've had it a couple days ago. So like pretty much the schedule of the D&D campaign is like every other 2 weeks so far. There may be 1 week where we're gonna do back-to-back episodes, and yeah, this is kind of like my little time to help me remember everything that's pretty much happened within the campaign so far, at least per session, and little bit of like a retelling of the story itself. So without further ado, I'm gonna dive right into that because it's better to get started now than later. And at some point, we'll be doing other things later tonight, but for now, it's this. So, we've already had our session zero. Session zero is like not too like that crazy or important. Besides that, nowadays session zeros are a nice thing for campaigns. Hi, watermelon, thank you for the water. But basically, session zeros are important to D&D campaigns nowadays because it is something that we cover people's humors, what they're comfortable with, and basically just do safety checks, rules of the table, and see if anybody has any qualms, things they want to work on, or if like any quick questions about what we might be doing. That was our session zero that happened 2 weeks before, and yeah, I am very much cozy. So this is kind of like a cozy section. Feel free to sit around, grab some snacks. I'll be telling basically like a huge story. Hopefully, I can get this done within 30 minutes or an hour. That's the plan. But if it bleeds over, that's what will happen. So the story starts off in session one. I actually named it called Prelude to Delusions because it's just how I thought it'd be named. And kind of like the theme of the whole situation, because my world is not based on regular like well, it's based on regular D&D, but it's definitely homebrew, and the concept itself is homebrew. Each of our characters come from a different world. Um, I had all my players write like their backstory and like where they came from, what their life was like, and also how they died. Whether it is like they died based on dying naturally, some crazy backstory. Um, but that's something that I won't talk about, at least currently, but just know that most of them have passed in some way. Also, hello, Watermelon. And feel free to lurk. It's just a good story time for the bit. And so, everybody has passed. Their souls have moved on into this, like, a kind of limbo state at the moment. I wouldn't say other world just yet, but a limbo state. And they all hear like this very much like a female holy being that like says these words of like, "Oh, wayward souls," and like as she's saying those words, like no one has their eyes; they're not fully formed yet. So a lot of the presence is like they're kind of just floating in black. They can't because like their souls haven't kind of like formed their own like astral shape yet, and so everything is kind of like not seen at this moment. So those two get you hear like the scuffling, and then you hear a different voice. It's like hi, like like a really kind of crazy, kooky, high pitched voice, and he kind of like takes you guys along the players for the ride for the adventure, and very much like well everybody has like their own like role for constitution, see how like they form, and whoever is born first and how long it takes. This being gives like a rundown of what's happened, and very much is like bleakly saying, "Yeah, you died. I don't know what to tell you." And they'll be starting a new life in this world called Terrace. Terrace is the world that this whole giant new world. It covers the whole world itself. And specifically, they'll be starting their life in, or restarting, or continuing life in the world of Terrace, but also in the village of Prema. Prema is like a starting point for them. The god itself like answers their questions. Their questions have been answered for the most part. The players in this scenario, I should probably introduce all of them because as they were forming, they also get introduced as well. Because the being Foe, his name's Foe. Well, their name's Foe. I should say that. Foe may have a male voice, but he's very much a non-binary being because there is no gender for this god itself. And he's like, Well, I already know the answer. In his mind, he's like, I already know the answer. And it's very funny because a lot of all the players or majority of them weren't like trusting of this being. So I had them like roll for, hey, insight, see how this deception is working, if he's lying or not. And from what they could tell, like he's not lying. They're not lying. And so from there, it's like, well, this is still kind of creepy, kind of shady. Are they actually dead? Some of them panic. Also, they're very much brought into like this whole giant white room of limbo. They're all like boxed up in like these little cubbies. So think of it as like having a room, right? Four walls, but one is open so that where they can see this being. I do have art of it, so I'll probably hold it every now and then just be like, hey, you guys want to look at some art? So you guys do get to see what faux looks like. I don't think I've actually gotten to show like what faux looks like in general, at least on stream. But this is what faux looks like. Uh, That's what faux looks like. A very much being a humanoid being of many different holes. And why? Well, I'll get to that in a second. So from there, they all get their little introductions one by one, and you basically, and at a certain point, Fo actually makes an extra panel open, like of light, kind of like a TV screen. So whoever's speaking gets like on the screen itself. And so we get introduced to Jass's character, Julius Ravenwood, who's very much like your classic suave blonde bard, I would say. I can't remember the rest of it, but I can pull up the character sheet of like in my mind. I don't have them registered like as who they are, but I do remember their names at least. Let me pull this up because I did not pull it up. That's some old campaign stuff. Don't even look at whoever this person is. Aha. I'd rather not open more tabs, but I gotta open more tabs to see everything. So yeah, Julius Ravenwood, human bard. And then from there, let's see, we go over to, I think, Soria. Soria is Jasmine's character. Soria is Soriya, and it's like the I part is like Ia in Korea, so you gotta say Soria, Soria, and it's like you gotta say it fast because you say it too slow, it doesn't work out. But Soria Mina, she's very much like, well, she is an elf warlock to be exact. The players actually don't know each other's classes. That's something I kept quiet for the longest time, and it was really funny for the time being. And then from then on, we get introduced to Sage. That'd be Chaos's character. Sage is a bunny folk, I believe a Haragon, until Chaos had issues with the file itself, and so now it's a kind of a mixture of things. But Sage is our human cleric who has an accent. I well, also Julius also has an accent as well. And then we get introduced to Taiko. Taiko is spelled like Taicho, but do I say Taiko like Psycho? Who is also an elf wizard, and that'll be Tristan's character for the story. It's really funny because the longest time I told him, you guys can't tell, you guys cannot mention to who is what and what class they are. I want this all a secret. And yeah, we're this team of squishy, for the most part, squishy mages. I if I say for the most part, let me see, let me check, this. But I was really afraid of how this might go potentially based on how little health they have. I need to check with. I guess I need to go Jazz with something real quick, but one second as we do this recap. But yes, so in the story, they all get introductions, and they're all kind of panicking in their own right. Sage is like, I, I'm in my own. I'm in fur. What? Huh? Because Sage, I guess this isn't their body. So, in the process of the souls moving, whether it is a bit of chaos, a spice, a little smidge of chaos being added into the mix, a little bit of subconscious of like wanting to be something else, you might not end up in the body you want, or your body, like how you see yourself, isn't going to be transferred into your next existence. And that is something that happened to Sage. Taiko, I put them in a certain size room, a little bit bigger than everything else, but it turns out they're claustrophobic. So they're very much screaming at a room by a 5 by 5 with barely any opening. So at some point, Vo got exhausted. Vo snaps their fingers like that, and a small bit of magic opens within like Ortega's throat, like right above the vocal cords. So any sound that was coming out was silenced, like purely quieted. And that was a wild moment, but it kept Taiko from constantly screaming and everybody else going into like this whole panic. Foe is also getting roasted by Soraya's character as well, and basically a lot of back and forth and banter happened in that whole situation. And then at a certain point, the holy being that was originally brought into the story, that was intervened with, they kind of like cut off the panel for a second, and those two got into like a quick argument, and she's named as Lita, the goddess of light, but also the goddess of resurrection. But she's tired of dealing with Foe, and Foe itself, themselves, was like, "Please, I'm bored. Can I do this?" Uh, and she's like, "Fine. Remember to make sure they're all the rules and stuff of the resurrection." Then we get into the bit of like where the players ask like, "If you brought us here, can't you bring us back to our old world?" And that was something I've had trouble for the most part for the longest time, until like I've rewritten the story to where it's better understood that it requires a lot of energy and magical power to transfer souls from one world to another. And Poe is the god of openings, and so bringing things into this world is a lot easier than bringing things out. And Foe themselves can like open portals for the most part, or like glimpses into like pocket worlds. And I believe from there, I'd say, going through all like the story things, that with like with enough explanations and talking, Foe offers everybody on like as the panel pops open, do you want a gift into this new life? And everybody was skeptical at first, for the situation of should I? Should I do this? Is this all right? And then and from there, from there, Bo was like, well, it's very hard to move on to another life and stuff like that. Uh, to a new life. So this is just like something to help ease their way into everything. And everybody has had a chance to, whether or not they like it or not, to click yes or click no. And they all said, oh, free gift? All right. It was really funny because in a past scenario, this ended up a little bit differently. Oh, thanks, Anari, for this episode. Sorry for the quick interruption for that, but thanks for the 8 months. and and so they're brought into the next life. Actually, no, they all take the gift, and so everybody receives like a different gift. Jazz gets a gift first. It's an ordinary brass ring, but upon closer inspection, he notices that there's like a small crack on it, and he decides not to put this ring on his finger because you know skeptical about it. Jasmine, Soria, I say Julius. From now on, I need to use their character by their like character names. Soria gets a seed, a reminiscent of a sunflower seed, about like a regular sized seed, with like, little sprouts coming out of it, and she gets very joyous about the existence of it. Chaos Sage gets a rock with a rune on it, and the rune itself looks like da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. Find the page in my little binder. Where is it? It's somewhere. Jeez, I've done so many different doodles over the years. A lot more than I thought I'd done. Ah, but like the rune itself looks like this. Nothing too big or special. Just that. On the rock itself, it's in like etched in blue a little bit. And then Taiko gets a book. Oh, I should also mention they all got like their items in a different way. Like for Julius, his came out from like a portal from the top, like the ring fell down. Soria, I believe, like a pedestal, and it was their seed. Uh, Sage got it like from the side where like just came out really quickly and up came something. And then lastly, Tycho got theirs from like a different area. And it's a purple book, a dark purple book. Thanks, Mari. Good night, and thank you. Then from there, so once they all have their gifts, they a portal kind of opens up. Also, in reference to a previous before this like restarted and all, well, before this whole campaign reevent, Poe actually makes a remark to the past of like, huh, I thought you guys would all pick that easy. All right. So they all a archway opens. They go through the door, and Poe also mentions that to make it easier, their past lives will be sealed from their minds, because having two lives while you're living another one is kind of hard. They still get the retention of who they were, like the very, very basics of like their existence, but nothing of like heavy from their past. And as they go through the portal, they feel like something opening in their minds and something getting sucked out, and it's very much a majority of their memories, because apparently folk can do that. And from there, well, Jazz and Tiger go through just fine. When Soria goes through, she hears the words, knowledge is power, knowledge is sexy, and then a puff of pink smoke. And then she continues to go through. Sage, on the other hand, while when she goes through, she hears two different voices, one male, one female. The female one goes, "O child who fared many souls to us earlier than expected, soaked in blood." And the male one, "We will aid you to find peace and meaning." And then the female voice went, "We will watch over you and protect you." And the male, again, "Find us in due time in the moon beneath the lake." And that's it. That's it for like session one, like of session one, like part one, I guess you could say, Prelude Illusions. Then we're led into session one, Your New Life Begins. And so each of them have all gone through the portal itself. The portal is still open, but slowly kind of closes from the back of them. And they're in this room that, like this giant dome room, where it's a cross section of a tree. So you get like the rings on the floor itself, and the inside dome of like different barks and tree parts. Right. And so they're in that room. They no, they're then they end up talking about like, oh, this is our new place. Can we make this our home? This is very spacious. Can we like this is ours? Do we own it? And like I was looking at them thinking, all right, uh, all right. And I also described to them like there's also an opening where like light comes through that's like natural light. It's very warm and imbuing. Well, this is like natural light itself, because the other light that we're in was very much a kind of like unnatural white light room, very much like a limbo space, and very much endless. But then Sage is the first one to like look out and notice that there's like golden stairs that lead down like a story lower, and then to like a field of a bunch of white flowers and little flecks and wisps that come out from like the flower itself, right? And then from there, pretty much Sage is like the first one to even go out and look around. They notice that like they're in a giant tree, but this tree, like inside, they can see it just fine, but the outside is blue and spectral nature, and so what Sage sees is like pretty much an upside down tree. The roots are reaching out into the sky, and then instead of like leaves, they get like these bunch of orbs, like portals into like other parts of worlds or the world itself. Like you can tell that the inside like is very much abstract landscapes of different arts, but you can't really make shape of like what is in there itself. And so this is what our spirit tree ended up looking like. That's what it looks like, kind of. A tree on a tree. And then let's see what else from there. From there, they so um everybody finally goes out. Soria looks at the flowers, like goes and like asks to sit in them. So Soria goes and like sits in them, and then notices that these like little wisps are actually like little spirits, where we're not necessarily introduced to all the spirits, but we see like different variations of what like different spirits look like. And I guess this is kind of like an exclusive view that you guys get to see because I how do you say we? No, it's not we. I didn't word. I didn't really introduce it to like, everybody else, like what they looked like and who they were. But these are some like the initial spirits that they got. Some of them are like about like 1 feet high, but our main spirit that we'll see in a second will be Finnick. Finnick's a little like a little smudge ball with little wings. And yes, you might have seen Chadwick, Candlewick, John Wick, Gloria. Gloria, fun fact, like a little bit of insider thing is a remake of a variation of I think a heart with luscious lips that I made in high school. For whatever reason, and it was just like I was in my Law and Order class, just thinking, okay, let's do this, and then my friends and I at the table were just laughing about it, how like silly it was. I was just like heart lips, a heart with lips for some reason. We're kind of like cardio, Rick cardio. Sorry, not cardio. Rick cardio from Adventure Time itself. And everybody was like talking about like, hey, oh, also, what I'm really grateful for was Julius like rounding up everybody like, hey, well, I got nothing better to do. You guys want to adventure together? Like, you always want to exist, I guess. Ooh, and something that I forgot in this recap to mention is that if a foe mentions to everybody that if they wanted to keep the memories, they have to make sure, well, if they want their memories back or unsealed, well, they'll have to go find foe in this world. Oh, and I forgot to mention also that I just remembered this really quick thing. Jasmine, Jasmine Soria was so funny because once Soria heard there were two gods, like Lita and Foe, she was like, "Oh, that's a pantheon now." And I was like, "Out of game? Yeah, that's a pantheon." it was it was such a funny reaction. I loved it. But back to the flowers. Like the flower field's so lovely, filled with different like white flowers from carnations, peonies. Tycho kind of panics to the fact that there are weird things coming out that he doesn't understand, and he's like, I cast uh, Frost Blast, I think was the spell, and I was like, so you're just gonna cast Frost? All right, you can cast it, but I need you to roll a d4 because it's within like a certain cardinal direction, and so because like Tycho said he's gonna cast it in what way, and I was just looking at them like, you could hit your teammates. Luckily, it didn't, but before it even happened, we had introduced to Okul. Okul popped out of the flowers, who's like this 3 foot goblin, and who uh, is like stop and explains like for them to stop, and there's like a little miscommunication between me and the and Taiko for a second because I asked like, okay, so that's what you want to do? You stop? And it's like I I just wanted to make sure. And then I guess he thought that I meant was like, oh, you're not gonna stop? Okay, like give me a second chance to do it. Like, I just wanted to make sure that that's what you're doing. And then he was gonna cast it again, but luckily everything stopped for there. So we get introduced to Okul, who is like a goblin that looks like, hi Sky Shield, how's it going? Who goes, let's see, let me go find Okul Dokul. Okul Dokul's gonna look like this, at least face wise. That is Okul Dokul. Very much like a Ned Flanders looking guy. Very big glasses for no apparent reason. And it's just like a really funny face thing, right? Then let's see. So Ugly Dokul is just like having to explain the whole scenario like, hey, if you need a place to stay, I live in the orphanage. Oh, is I want to for bed. I won't ask what time it is for you, but how much more time until bed is for you. Anyways, back to the story. I would need to like go bounce back and forth a little bit, but that's totally fine. So from there, Okul says like he lives in the orphanage and is like with there with like other family members because he's an orphan, and Granny Igba is like our director of the place. Granny Igba Tigba, and that's her name. But so there's the whole introduction. Then there's also the introduction to Finnick. Finnick is one of the spirit guides. Spirit guides are there to help, kind of like your tutorial being. I'm not. Finnick used to be a little bit more annoying, kind of like Navi from Legend of Zelda, but decided not to because you know I'm not saying no one likes Navi, but having less cute guides that are there to be cute and sort of obnoxious is a pleasure. Pleasure to have around, right? And and so that happens, and no, Finnick's job is to like to help out, but Finnick isn't Finnick doesn't have to if they don't want him around. Luckily, Soria like was saying, "Oh, you come along," and like Finnick was like crying and happy, and there were a lot of different like roasts happening and back and forth. I think Soria asked if they could call, uh, if they can call, if they could call Uncle Daddy, and I was like, "How, Soria? How old are you?" Because for some reason, Sonia thought that Ogle was in his like older age, 50s, 70s. Ooh, okay. I can see that like WoW leveling can be like time consuming. I don't play WoW, but I have a friend who does, so I know a little bit about it. But yes, and I was just like, how old are you? So Soria is. I can talk about this because this was something we talked about. Where is her age? How old are you? Well, I know. Soria is 24. Oko's 33. And like Oko does wear like a sweater vest and all that. But besides the point, Oko was like, I'm 33 and like took offense to it just a little bit, hurt feelings. But then the group decides, yeah, we'll come along. Free lodging. Hey, they can't complain. Because so in this world, currently the patented name that until better named until I figure it out and think about it is if they get renamed as what's the word? Hmm They're called New Lifers currently, or Second Lifers for some of those, if you want to call it that. And the orphanage is a good place for them because it's free lodging, and Oka will help them like get their currency all in order because currency from each world is also different. So you had like shells. Uh, Julius had regular coins. I didn't check on the others; they didn't really show their money, but they need to go to the guild at some point to exchange their currency for the money that they need because they have to use a certain currency in this world. Because then it'd be very confusing if everybody used their own money for their own world, and we don't know how much that is, and just wanted to make sure that that small little niche thing is covered, right? Oh, okay. So what's happening in your campaign, if you don't mind talking about it? And so, but back to what's happening. So they get led into the orphanage. There's note that Lala, no, like the guard at the gate itself is not there. Oh, and I should also mention that. See, I'm going through all this story, but there's always gonna be something that goes we. Okay, I need to mention this, but so the place where the spirit tree is in like a ring encompassed by flowers, but along is like a whole gate or like a brick wall, and then there's like a black gate that swings open for them to enter and leave as they please. But and then they're brought to the orphanage. The orphanage itself is also gated, but the doors like the gate opens and closes. Well, they can open themselves. But yeah, Lala's not there. She's probably at lunch taking a break. But they're brought to the orphanage. The orphanage is like a C block kind of building. Like part of the C is smaller on one end, one is longer than the other. On the left side is the longer side, and on the right side is the shorter side. And the, the orphanage itself is like pretty run down. Like paint is chipping, there are cracks, and you know, it's not beautiful cosmetically. But they're let inside into like these wooden doors that have also seen lots of wear and tear. And when they look inside, they realize, oh, you thought the front was back? The inside's kind of bad too, with webs. There's like the flooring could use some work. There's some leakage that happened, like leaking stains from the ceiling, and some black mold somewhere. And the first thing these guys all want to do is look for food. And as I mentioned food, that also reminds me of one other thing. Saria and Julius both like instantly thought, we don't have our stuff. And Fo was like, what do you mean? You have your stuff. And and I'm like, look behind you, or you're like a little thumb. There's your stuff. And then Julius said, that wasn't there before. And I was like, what are you talking about? That was always there. And then Soria was like, where are my snacks? Like they all tried uh, scamming him for stuff, like for like 1,000 gold. And luckily it failed and all that. But everything that they already had was already there, or it should have been there. Ooh, okay. Interesting, interesting. But yes, so they all want to look for food, or well, at least Soria and I think Julius want to look for food mostly, because like we're hungry, and things kind of got sidetracked. Soria was looking through the rooms. I had to describe the rooms on the left wing of the orphanage itself. So there's one room at the very far end of the hall, like far end, and then to the left. And then there's 5 empty rooms. There's 8 rooms mostly in this building itself that people could have and live, mostly uninhabited. Each room is different, but they all have their own flaws. Like some have holes in the ceiling, some have uh, dirt floor because some of the wood has eroded or the flooring has eroded. Some cracks, some leakage, some leak stains. But one of the doors is taken by Roth the Goth, one of the people that live there, also who grew up in the orphanage, and his wife, Helena Roth. And Soria was like, I'm not living next to that. I don't want that. I'm gonna be there. Taiko lives next to Soria because they kind of become friends because Taiko is kind of always at least currently having a panic attack, and Sori's like kind of just checking up on him, making sure he's okay and all that. And it's super sweet how their relationship's happening. Sage is across the room. The first thing that Sage does is like jack an armchair, like a rocking chair, because I guess Sage doesn't like sleep on beds, and so like immediately once getting that armchair into the room and settling in, just like passed out. and then and then Julius didn't care about his room itself. He's like, I don't care. And I was like, okay, roll for me then, and we'll see what room you get. And so Julius ends up getting a room on the other side of the building, and notices that there's actually stairs leading up. No one else went up the stairs just yet. And from there, let's see, anything else happens? Oh yes, Soria then decides to like visit everybody and check how they're doing. Soria visits Taiko first, actually no, Sage first, and like before the passing out, and they just talk for a brief moment, making sure she like knocks respectfully. Sage didn't leave her door closed at all. And then visit Taiko. Taiko does not leave it closed, not closed, his door closed, and because of the fact that he's very much claustrophobic and he needs to have the door open before screaming, or more screaming ensues. They decide to rip the door open. The door has definitely seen better days, so they help out each other to take this door down like off its hinges, and with the strength actually ends up breaking the door in half instead. And then just as they're about to like take off the other part, it kind of just falls into dust. Like these doors have seen way better days. Then they check on Jas, and yeah, and then a weird female like voice comes and looks for Okul in the whole building, and it turns out that is Helena, describing that currently Granny Igba Tigba. No, and well, as I can remember, the strength roll wasn't even. Honestly, I don't remember what roll it was or if it was high, but it was just good enough. I've been seeing a lot of high rolls for no apparent reason in certain areas, and I'm just like, okay. And a lot of fail rolls, and I'm enjoying it. But so from there, what happens is Oko goes upstairs, and that then they're like introduced to the voicing of like Helena. They kind of hear it, they kind of don't. Not all of them do. And basically, what comes run down after Oko comes back down is like, hey, I'm sorry. I know you come to like this world anew and stuff, but I'm willing. Like, I have a mission for you guys to do if you guys don't mind. Like, I know you guys are still settling in, and I'm voicing this in my voice right now. I am not planning to do character voices, but I think the next time I do this, I will do character voices. But Okul is supposed to be voiced and sounds like Ned Flanders from The Simpsons, but he says neighborino a lot and says like, "I'm willing to drop this quest of to make a quest at the guild hall, or the Adventurers Guild to, make sure you guys get paid." And they're like, "Payment? Say no more. Say less. You said you're gonna pay us. Say less." And that happens. They're taken to the Adventurers Guild, and they get to see like the introduction of like an orc, some other adventurers, a fox person, a tabaxi, many different people. Because like Sage is again not comfortable in this new body. Also, Sage is using different pronouns currently. In Sage's mind, from their past, like a little brief past, is they were male. They were very much male. But right now, they currently don't know, at least in character, they don't know they're female, but they do know they're a fluffy rabbit. And so far, the group has teased Sage's character, like, "Oh, you're so fluffy," and the chaos is just like, "What? No." But they're brought over to Adelaide, one of the attendants of the guild hall itself, and she runs down like how they become an adventurer and if they have to like deposit their money to like switch out for the currency of this world. And the way that they're kind of registered to the guild is that they sign their name, race, their class, their like, and all the basics basically. And at the very end, they prick their finger on a needle and then put it on like the paperwork, and then this piece of paper transforms into a silver guild card that is etched with like gold for like certain letters, and they're all registered in. Okul is like currently filling up the guild paper request for this whole get some medication and medicine for Granny Igba so she can potentially get better because they need to go find it. And the group does end up actually asking Okul like, "Hey, why didn't you ask like all these other adventurers?" And Okul explains like, "I mean, I just want to help you guys get settled into this world, and sometimes the Avengers can be very, very mean about payment. Like a lot of them, they're not like the Avengers in this world aren't, at least here, aren't the nicest of people, and they kind of treat Okul not the best, whether it is because he's growing up in an orphanage or just in general. Like they think some of the Avengers think they're kind of better, and Sonya like kind of gets that introduction because she's hungry and she's like, "Where do I get a bite of food?" So she goes up to like ask the orc adventurer, and the orc adventurer very much like scoffs at her, and like looks at her like she's dumb, and like just rudely answers and says like, "You can just talk to Adelaide." And yeah, so Adelaide, she goes to Adelaide, and as that's happening, we go over to Julius, who in this guild hall itself, there is like a brief second floor that's also like everything that you can't go access to is employees only, but there is also a quest board off to the left side. And on this quest board, there are specific, quests on there that's scattered with tons of different papers, some ripped off, some that haven't been taken down. And they kind of inspect, they get to see like certain bits and pieces of like the quest itself. I believe there was a haunted mansion they could see immediately, clean up the beach, and they tried their best to make it out, but there was a section where it said miss scribble period, like says like just says they can't really make out all the words besides those little bits and pieces. There was one that was like really sad that they couldn't see, but it was just more of like for fun. I forgot if they got to see or not. No, they did not. But and then it's paneled back to Tycho and to Adelaide, Adelaide and Soria. Soria is like, I'm hungry, and like they have no complaints. What they want are food. And Sage is also very like kind of worried about food because they're a bunny. They're like, I don't know what's poisonous now. And they get to me like, you can eat vegetables, you can't eat meat or something like that. Constant Sage teasing, but Sage can handle like all that teasing, which was which I was kind of just enjoying little banters bits, right? And then from there, Adelaide goes off and brings back a 1 foot by 1 foot sandwich, and like all my members in the Discord call were like, like Chaos pulled out a full like ruler and said 1 foot by 1 foot sandwich. That's a huge sandwich. And so like Soria was like offering the sandwich to everybody. Tycho's like offering the like asking for a coffee, and then Adelaide's like, how dark do you want it? And Tycho has certain words that kind of make him panic, and one of them is dark. Just dark. And, and it's like he wants it with sugar and cream. And so Adelaide comes back. It is 2% coffee, 99% cream, cream, sugar, and milk. That is what it became. But and from there, they finish off the filling out. Here's the quest. They all they do now that it's on the board, just gotta rip it off and they can go on it. And then they're taken to where the quest location is. Okul goes. Julius asks Adelaide, can they have like a map of the world or like a map? And Adelaide gives him a map, but the map itself will only show regions of the world that they have been to, so they know where to get to and where to go back. And I tell them, well, out of game, and something for you guys to know. I didn't really tell them this, but it's mainly because I haven't really drawn a map of the world. We're starting out small, you know, and so that gives me time to fill it out as adventures ensue. So kind of like a DM's excuse and reasons. From there, so they're taken past like the pier into the location of the border of Kingdom of Guardia. That's the place that they're in. The village of Prema exists within the continent of Guardia, the kingdom itself. And then on the other side, the continent of Hungary, which is like a food-based continent. But on the way, they see like the pier of like the market, the night market that exists, like the beach. They see statues of like these guards itself, kind of like knights with shields. But a lot of it's destroyed, like the pier itself, and the statues are kind of like broken down. And normally these statues kind of cast a giant barrier to protect from like crazy incidences or like disasters. And it turns out there was a kraken that attacked the beach recently, so there's like a whole like mess on the beach. Like it's kind of broken down at the moment. Oakland mentions that he won't be coming with them. There's actually somebody who is better suited for this the guidance for Hung Yi because Oakland hasn't really left the orphanage really. Also, same with Finnick. Finnick's a very young spirit guide. Like Finnick can help out, but he's only 100 years old and has most knowledge, but not a knowledge of everything. I'm mentioning these things as like I recall them, and so if it's not fully linear of the story, do forgive me. I'll get better at it with time. But for now, that's just how it's gonna roll for a bit. From there, so they get introduced to Limo Lemolius. Limo Lemolius has like a very high voice, very much wearing a full black outfit and yellow hands, a whole lemon face. And if you couldn't guess, yes, Limo Lemolius is a variant of Lemon Grab for Adventure Time. And they kind of ask about Limo's existence and who he is, and he is a refugee from the continent of Hungary. Hungary is made of like different sects of the like food world. There are foods, and there's a whole issue that's happening. Currently, there's a whole rot that is taking over the land. That is kind of well, that kind of gets introduced in a couple minutes more so, but we'll pause for that. So they're taken to the border. The guards kind of block off, and they have to show like their adventurous cards and to go on, and the receipt, their reason, and they go through just fine. And then once they cross the beach transfers from sand to like this pink and white sand. And the first thing Soria does is tries to eat it because they could smell it smells kind of like food, and because they're still hungry for some reason. But we talked about at a game. We talked about, would you really want to eat food that's been stepped on constantly? And Soria was like, I can just dig under the floor. I can do that, and like it hasn't been stepped on. Does that mean it's like it's fresh? I looked like, all right, if that's your prerogative. And so she does so. She eats it. Turns out it tastes like strawberry frosting. And it talks about like trying to eat these things. That some of the trees are like regular chocolate bark with like gumdrops on top. But as like they walk through, they notice like some of them are kind of like heavily melted, and so that ties back into the rot itself. And and they kind of like ask like again like why. Well, even like decided to be a refugee and move on. But from there, it's like, why wouldn't I? When the world itself, or their world, their people are being taken over and decaying. Like it's described that they kind of like, well, they it's kind of like a zombie infection but for food, and you kind of get introduced to the idea of the undead or the unbred that gets mentioned. And at a game, Jazz is like, this world's Adventure Time, isn't it? And I'm like, no, no. And I want to say yes and no. So it is inspired by Adventure Time, but there are other inspirations for it as well. So like a lot of this like homebrew world is inspirations from a lot of different media that I've seen, but also how my mind decides to create these things and intertwine it. So as they get introduced, you might get to see like where the inspiration comes from, or it even gets told directly by me itself. Then from there, so they venture deeper. Things are changing. They smell like the trees smell like mint. Some of them different flavors, and then the adventurers start to hear sound of lum lum lum, and they're surrounded by lemons and limes. And it turns out they might have encroached on territory of these creatures. At first, they were apprehensive of like attacking them, but they slowly kind of like voice their lums, like super aggressively. And combat's getting triggered. And like, dun, 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 right? And so then the Avengers get attacked. You got your lemons and limes. Lemons seem like they're melee attackers, and limes seem to be like ranged. And think of it as they're 2 feet, I think 2 to 3 feet tall. Lemons and limes are giant, and they got like little mouths and like tongues. Some of them like try to lick them. They notice that the text miss, and like the floor starts to sizzle. Some of the tree kind of like gets melted, and yeah, they got acid attacks. For the most part, the team doesn't really get hit, but when they do get hit, it's like, think of it as you have a cut on your finger, right? And you put acid or like lemon juice like on it. That stinging sensation. Nemo the Moly is pretty much useless in combat. He's actually not a fighter. He kind of crouches down and that's the group to kind of protect him. He kind of takes a couple of hits here and there. Same with other members of the team, but most of the team kind of obliterates the monsters themselves. I might have made it too easy because I thought they were, because again I am very much a new DM. I thought they'd be very much squishier, so I was like, yeah, okay, they're all level 1 adventurers. Oh, that's also a mechanic that I should have mentioned way earlier on. But yeah, they all start at level 1 because it's a new life. Let's restart it, right? And and so everything kind of just dies and gets obliterated. They use like frost spells. Tycho decides to say like I'm not afraid of fruit and decides to go and like curb stomp it to death. The Sarai decides to go punch it and like knocks it out. Some of them got like a hole with a firebolt burnt through their chest. It was radical. And then once everything's defeated, they're like, okay, it's all done, right? I'm like, no. Then they hear like large thumps and crackles, like vines, and they're introduced to a giant lemon monster, which turns out has the thing they're looking for. Before this whole situation happened, they described that the medicine they're looking for is these little herbs that have like two sprouts that look very similar to basil. The monster itself, let's see. So here we are. Here we have on this page lemon monster right here. That will be our melee lemon. And then lime right there as your like creatures, right? And oh, that was an interesting time. So I will full discretion. There is a whole way they could have solved this less violently for when it came to the lemon monster. I did my best as DM to like, hey, make perception check. Oh, here, do an investigation. Just because like, sometimes I want to nudge them a little bit, but unfortunately, they weren't able to roll high enough, or one of them did roll high enough, but didn't mention it to anybody else. Tycho. But Sage being a bunny, having like a ability to hop up to like 10 feet in the air, was decided I'll just jump and like pluck one of these sprigs. But yeah, they went murder hobo. They went blasting, and as they're blasting, like very initially, the screams um of the lemon monster was like very much like crying and sobbing, and like pain. Like it didn't actually want to fight, but it's like kind of like defending itself. Because like Chas, when seeing it, immediately said firebolt. But the combat happens. They finish it off. It is destroyed, defeated. There's somewhat some guilt into them. But Tycho notices before the whole death that there's like a giant thorn in like this lemon monster. Well, it's too late. It's dead. They loot the corpse for the last two sprigs because there are three sprigs of the medicine on their head. And Jazz decides to loot, like cut a giant lemon slice. Maybe to make lemonade, maybe for food, for whatever reason. But that's what they have. Now they go back home. They go back to the orphanage. They give the medicine to Helena. Helena has it. They all come to see Granny Igba for the first time. Granny Igba is like described as a dark-skinned human with like skin that has like wrinkled and dried. Like she resembles death herself. Like her hair is like black and wavy, but like very much has lack of life in it, and like it's really sad how she's introduced, and like her face, her skin, her like light, like her face is like been sullen and like all like it's skin that just covers a skull at this point. Her eyes don't really resemble besides like black, sunken, and Soria tries to talk to her, and all she gets is like very like slow crook of the neck, and as like and Granny Igba tries to speak, she goes like just airs the words that don't come out, and this seems like it's like the last time, or it might be her last. And then by this time, it's like evening. It's dark. Ally comes in, administers the medicine, and then says, "You might want to back up just in case if everything's fine." And everyone thinks that something really bad has happened. That's when some exorcist-ish kind of happens. So Granny Tigba's body rises up. Her body's still covered in a blanket. She's very much vertical, right? Then all of a sudden she abruptly turns horizontal, right? Turns vertical in the air, flash bangs everybody with like pink golden light, and starts spinning and spinning and not spinning golden light, but pink light spinning and spinning and spinning. And as she like spinning, the light comes like back inside, and then Basically, she gets described as like her life comes back into her body, then like things come out in the front, very much large balloons. And I ask everybody's like how close they are. Luckily, no one's close. And then very like as this spinning's happening, you guys remember the movie Robots? Do you remember that one old granny robot with the large trunk? Well, that's pretty much what happens. And it swings. Luckily, narrowly avoids Soria for a hit, but unfortunately, it hits like a I forgot glass or candle or mug, and like bashes it in the wall. Like it shatters, and we get introduced to like, and then it turns back, and we're introduced to Granny Igvatikva with a very large proportions and a southern accent. Really treats everybody like lovely. Tells everybody that it's time for like Okul for the pay to pay everybody for the things, and a night on the town is for it's on her. And they're like, night on the town, free food, hell yeah, might as well, right? And I kind of had to rush that section a little bit because we have exactly 4 hours max for when it comes to our campaigns, and from there, it is led that Granny Igba's like, come follow me. I'll show you a night on the town. And that's where we had to end that session. It was kind of sad because there's actually a whole other part, but that was for session 2. And I'm super excited for that. But yeah, that was my first time being nervous, happy, and really excited for like being a DM. My first 2 times weren't the best, and I feel more confident and a bit happier about doing this again. And yeah, that's session 1. You get introduced to a bunch of different characters, a quick world building, and I guess if you guys have any questions, I'm totally welcome. You guys are totally welcome to answer. But if it crosses into something that hasn't been seen yet by the player itself, I will not mention it until the next time we have a recap, which will be probably 2 weeks from now. But I definitely overplanned, and I should remember that if you overplan, it's totally fine. Just don't expect everything to be solved, because that's D&D for you guys. Your players will always have things longer than they should be itself, you know? Alright, let me move this. But I'm so excited for session 2. I, I, mm, like, alright, but yeah, I am gonna open something up. So without further ado, if there's nothing else, I'm gonna wrap up this section, but I will be right back because I like to make sure that these like deviate into their own things so I can post them up for later. But in a couple of minutes, we'll be back with Reverse 1999. And unfortunately, I won't have enough time to do my self-care stuff tonight. And we'll have to save that for another week. Just because things have been kind of sidetracked. And I want to play some Reverse 1999 tonight. So, without further ado, thank you to everybody who came by for this section. And for the first ever time of the D&D recap, from Minari, Sky Shield, Mari, Watermelon, and Watermelon itself, and for anybody else who's lurking around. And if you see this on YouTube, thanks for watching. And you want to see me live or come around when we have a little recap, or you have any questions for the recap itself, feel free to come to Twitch. But for now, DjDoubleT out and about, and be right back with some Reverse 19.